Good night, teacher and classmates. My name is Cristian Mora Chacón, and I'm going to talk about the book called The War of Worlds. This book was written by Herbert George Wells, who is this man in this photo, and who is better known as H.G. Wells. In chapter number 1, Before the War, the narrator starts the story describing the Earth and some people thought at the end of the 19th century, where he mentions that anyone believed that intelligences greater than our own had already been watching this world closely, overall in the planet Mars, due to that planet is older than Earth. So he continued describing Mars and what was happening to that planet, and in the end of the chapter, I'm sorry, he had the opportunity to meet Ogilvy, who was a well-known astronomer. In this second chapter, a falling star was seen in the sky by a few amount of people, and one of those people was Ogilvy, who saw it falling down, and he decided to go to investigate more closely. So he got up early after dawn, and he found an enormous hole that the star had made. However, he realized that it was like an enormous cylinder made of metal. Also, Ogilvy contacted a journalist called Henderson to ask him to write about what was happening in that place. In the third chapter, the cylinder opens. All the crowd around the pit had increased to a couple of hundred people, and while everyone kept seeing the cylinder, it had started screwing more and more. So it finally finished opening, as you can see in this photo, and the narrator stared stared at the gray creatures um, coming out of the cylinder. So he felt like he couldn't move, and he stayed there, impressed about the creatures that had tentacles and a weird shape, very different from human shape, of course. So then he decided to retreat to a grove of trees and tried to watch, but he couldn't no longer see what was happening in the pit around the cylinder, and he almost died due to invisible rays that Martians were using, making an incomplete circle, fortunately. In chapter 4, Mars Attacks, after the narrator realized that he was miraculously alive, he ran in terror until he fell down, due to tiredness beside the road. As you can see here in this picture that he miraculously still alive. He remained there for some time, but when he re regained his strength, he saw a group of people and he approached them. He asked them what happened on the common, because he was a little confused, but they made fun of him, and he returned home and told his wife what he had witnessed. Once he stayed home, he saw a second cylinder falling, and due to that, a military regiment had been activated, so he decided to go down to the bridge where he stayed to talk with an artilleryman and ask him how would they deal with Martians. But he didn't get any answer, so he decided to return home again. As soon as he returned home, he could see several buildings around his house destroyed, and he realized that the heat ray could reach his house as well. So the narrator grabbed his wife and servant and took a horse and a cart from his neighbor and rode toward Leatherhead. In the fifth chapter, Running Away, the narrator traveled 12 miles to Leatherhead without any problem. Once they reached that place, the narrator left his wife and servant with his cousins who lived there, and he decided to return to his home so that he could give back the horse and the cart he had borrowed. While he was returning home, he saw a third falling star, and he suspected that it contained more Martians, of course. He also saw two large metal machines rising over the hill, which he described as a tripod with a large dish at the top. Due to that, as you can see in this photo, that it is representing the large machine. Due to that, the narrator panicked completely and pulled his horse's head hard round to the right, causing the car to overturn, which killed the poor horse and made him fall heavily into a shallow pool of water. As soon as he could enter his home, he whispered to a man he saw passing in front of the house. It turns out that the man was a soldier. Okay, now to finish, I'm sorry, my point of view of existence of life out of the planet is that I do think that it can exist life beyond solar system limits. As you can see in this picture of Milky Way and in this another picture or in this picture, we are a minuscule part of Earth and a very, very small part of this great universe where we live. So we still don't know how many other forms of life are out there in the galaxy, and there's a lot of unknown planets, stars, and other ways like Milky Way. Well, this is better known, but I mean, even another universes that we don't know, or close planets, for example. So yeah, basically my point of view is that life does exist out of the earth, and it probably can be also smarter than us. So yeah, that's my point of view. And thank you so much for your attention. That's all.